I had always believed I was careful, measured, the kind of person who planned tomorrow before finishing today. I kept lists in neat handwriting, folded my worries into manageable shapes, and told myself that feelings were something you acknowledged politely and then set aside. Love, if it ever came, would arrive calmly with permission, like a guest who rang the bell and waited to be invited in. That belief didn't survive the afternoon I met him. It wasn't dramatic at first. No thunder, no slow motion. Just a regular day with the sun resting lazily on the city and the hum of traffic carrying on as it always did. I was late, juggling a bag that refused to cooperate and a mind that wouldn't stop racing. When I reached for the door of the small community library, someone reached for it at the same time. Our hands missed each other by a breath. We both laughed, that reflex laugh people use to soften a moment, and he stepped back to let me pass. "After you," he said, simple and kind. That should have been it. A small courtesy, forgotten by evening. But as I walked past, something inside me shifted. Not in a way I could name. Just a sudden awareness, like the room had grown warmer, like my chest had remembered a rhythm it had forgotten. I paused, confused by my own reaction, and told myself it was nothing more than being tired. Inside, the library smelled of old paper and quiet patience. I found a seat near the window and tried to focus, but my thoughts refused to line up. Every few minutes, I caught sight of him between the shelves, reading titles as if he was listening for something. He had an ease about him, a calm that didn't demand attention yet somehow held it. I didn't plan to speak to him again. I didn't think about how my breath felt lighter, or why my hands were warmer than usual. I simply stood up when it was time to leave, gathered my things, and turned toward the exit. He was there again, returning a book. We exchanged another smile, another harmless moment. And then, without warning, my body reacted before I could think. My heart sped up, my breath caught, and my feet stopped moving. It was as if some inner compass had suddenly spun, pointing me toward a truth I hadn't prepared for. I felt embarrassed by the intensity of it. Nothing had happened. No promises, no history. And yet I felt shaken, as though I'd stepped onto a bridge I didn't know existed. "Are you okay?" he asked, noticing my pause. "Yes," I said too quickly. Then, more honestly, "I think so." He nodded, not pressing, and for that I was grateful. We walked out together, the city welcoming us back with noise and color. At the corner, we stopped. "I'm Daniel," he said. I told him my name, and the way he repeated it, carefully, as if it mattered, sent another quiet ripple through me. We didn't exchange numbers that day. We didn't make plans. We simply went our separate ways. I told myself it was better like that. Safer. But the days that followed were restless. I found myself replaying small details. The way he listened, the steadiness in his voice, the kindness that didn't ask for anything in return. I scolded myself for building meaning from so little. Still, something had changed. I felt more awake, more aware of the world around me. A week later, I saw him again. This time at the bus stop, rain threatening to fall but holding back. He smiled as if he'd hoped to see me, and that hope, reflected back at me, made my chest tighten in a way that was both frightening and warm. We talked then, about ordinary things. Work, books, the strange comfort of routine. He spoke about his mother, who taught him patience, and his father, who taught him responsibility. I spoke about my fear of letting life surprise me, about how I liked control because it felt like safety. He listened without interrupting. When the bus arrived, neither of us moved right away. "Would you like to have tea sometime?" he asked, gentle, giving me room to say no. I surprised myself by saying yes. That was the beginning. Our time together unfolded slowly, deliberately. Tea turned into walks, walks into conversations that stretched into the evening. We talked about dreams we had set aside, about disappointments we carried quietly. With him, I felt seen, not examined. There was no pressure to perform, no expectation to become someone else. And yet, each time we parted, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. A flutter of nerves, a warmth in my chest, a strange mix of joy and fear. I didn't know this could happen without drama, without crossing lines. I didn't know that closeness could feel so powerful while remaining respectful. One evening, as we sat on a park bench watching children chase pigeons, I confessed my confusion. "I'm not used to this," I said, "feeling so much without knowing where it leads." He considered this, then smiled softly. Maybe it doesn't have to lead anywhere right away. Maybe it just has to be honest. Those words settled into me like a promise. Not a promise of forever, but a promise of presence, of showing up as we were. There were moments when my old instincts tried to pull me back. Times when I wanted to retreat, to regain control by creating distance. Daniel never chased me in those moments. He stayed steady, letting me find my way back on my own. That steadiness taught me something important, that love, when it is healthy, does not rush or demand. It waits. As weeks passed, I noticed changes in myself. I laughed more easily. I slept more deeply. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head before they happened. My body, which I had treated like a machine to be managed, began to feel like a partner instead, sending signals I learned to trust. One night, after a long day, I arrived at our usual cafe feeling heavy with doubt. The world felt uncertain, and my fears crowded close. I told him I was scared of losing myself, of becoming dependent on something I couldn't control. He reached across the table, not to touch, but to close the distance, and said, "You're not losing yourself. You're discovering parts you didn't have space for before." Something inside me loosened. Tears came without warning, my body reacting before I could stop them. I hadn't known how much I needed permission to feel without explanation. We grew closer, not through grand gestures, but through consistency. Through showing up when it mattered. Through silence that felt comfortable rather than empty. My idea of romance changed. It became less about intensity and more about trust. Months later, standing on the same corner where we had first spoken our names, I realized how far I had come. I was still careful, still thoughtful. But I was no longer closed. I had learned that control is not the same as safety, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself respond before your fear has time to speak. "I didn't know this could happen," I said to him, watching the city lights come on one by one. He smiled. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." In that moment, my body reacted again, heart steady, breath calm, warmth spreading like reassurance. Not because I had lost control, but because I had finally learned when to let go.